The amazing moment a billionaire transformed her life forever. The diner was a haven against the storm, a small sanctuary where the world outside was reduced to the sound of rain tapping against the glass, blurring the lines between reality and dreams. Mary Thompson moved through the faded booths with grace, her smile a mask hiding the chaos swirling in her mind. At 32, she was a waitress, a caretaker for her ailing mother, and the proud mother of little Lily, who had the bright eyes of someone still unburdened by life's weighty responsibilities. But beneath the surface of grease stains and coffee breaks lay a heart that longed to weave words into stories, a passion tucked away in a notebook hidden in the back room. On this stormy Tuesday evening, as patrons exchanged their tales of pride and heartbreak, Mary's mind wandered to what could be. She poured steaming coffee into chipped mugs, letting the aromas fill her with fleeting inspiration. But each drop reminded her of the burdens she carried, bills piling up, her mother's weakening health, and Lily's relentless energy that drew from Mary's already drained spirit. The dream of becoming a writer lingered just out of reach, a fantastical notion that felt bold, reckless, and selfish against her daily fight for stability. Then she overheard the infectious, confident laugh of a man seated at a corner table. It was James Donovan, the billionaire entrepreneur whose success stories inspired hundreds, spilling his soul about mentorship for aspiring writers. As he spoke, Mary's heart raced. It was a moment that felt rebellious, deliciously vulnerable. She found herself eavesdropping, her gaze flicking back and forth between the table and her duties, torn between the mundane and the extraordinary, like a moth drawn to a bright flame. Before she knew it, their eyes locked as she refilled his cup. She gathered her courage, her voice trembling slightly as she shared her dreams. A strange connection sparked between them, hope dancing in the air like the lightning flashing outside. James's encouragement flowed over her, igniting her spirit, and along with it, guilt clawed at her resolve. Could she really abandon the only life she knew? The weight of her mother's illness pressed down like an anchor, and the thought of leaving Lily, who needed her more than ever, filled her with dread. The thought of becoming who she yearned to be felt foreign, almost sinful. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, Just as she mustered the courage to share her writing, an unexpected scandal erupted, shaking the diner to its core. Whispers reached her ears, threads of intrigue linking back to James's business dealings. The accusations of betrayal hung in the air like a storm cloud, threatening to rain down chaos on her newfound hope. Mary held her breath, frustration boiling within. Was this connection forged in the fire of ambition, only to be extinguished by scandal? Each face around her twisted with suspicion and doubt, and she felt their eyes scrutinizing her, waiting for her next move. As the tension thickened, her own thoughts clamored for attention, leaving her breathless. Should she be loyal to her family or chase a path that felt increasingly slippery? The stakes grew higher, pulling her deeper into uncertainty. Would she dare to dream if it came at a cost? The weight on her chest constricted, every moment suspended in a charged silence, as lightning flickered outside, mirroring the flickering hopes and fears in her heart. Would she leap into the unknown, or retreat back to the safety of her routine? The rain lashed against the diner windows, much like Mary's thoughts as she wiped down the countertops with a ragged cloth, her mind still ensnared in that moment of electrifying connection. The storm outside mirrored the tempest within, her heart racing as she grappled with the choices laid before her. Could she dare to embrace the uncertainty, or would she keep her dreams locked away, rotting quietly in the corners of her life? With every passing minute, she sensed the weight of the onlookers, the curious glances and hushed whispers swirling around her like a cyclone. It ignited a flicker of anger. She had poured her heart into the world, only to be met with scrutiny. Why was she feeling compelled to choose between duty and desire? Hadn't she earned the right to dream, to craft her own narrative instead of merely serving others' stories? As she moved through the diner, serving customers and dodging her own internal storm, James's voice echoed in her ears, engaging others in elevated discussions about dreams and aspirations. Mentoring isn't just giving advice, he had said. It's about believing in someone's potential when they can't see it themselves. Could she find that belief in herself? But the specter of her mother's illness loomed large. Mary chided herself. Couldn't she be both? A daughter, a mother, and a writer, all at once? Each identity was a thread of her existence, and it was time to weave them into a single tapestry rather than compartmentalize them into chaos. Determined, she caught herself glancing toward the back room, eyes landing on the little notebook she had hidden for years. The idea of pulling it out was an act of rebellion against her own quietude. Maybe writing wouldn't just be an escape. Perhaps it could become a lifeline, not just to herself, but to Lily. If nothing else, she could show her daughter that dreams shouldn't languish in the shadows of practicalities. Finally, during an unusually slow moment in the diner, Mary excused herself from the hustle and bustle. The back room felt like a sacred space, the walls closing in to cradle her resolve. She reached for that notebook, dusting off well-worn pages crammed with ideas and half-finished tales. The smell of old paper was intoxicating, and as she opened it, her heart raced with familiar excitement. Lines began to flood her mind. Timid phrases turned bold, sentences danced through her consciousness. She picked up a pen with strong, deliberate strokes. The words poured out, unfiltered. The story unfolded not just on the page, but in her heart, where imagination fused with reality. Suddenly, the sound of raised voices outside the diner jolted her focus. Curiosity and concern intertwined, breaking her writing trance. Pushing the notebook aside, she stepped toward the door, her instincts piqued. The scandal swirling around James had not dissipated. Rather, it intensified to a fever pitch. Mary could feel the electric energy beyond the diner as patrons spilled out, drawn to heated arguments about trusting one's mentors and the cost of ambition. Would this revelation change everything she had just committed to? Her heart raced. She hastily tucked the notebook under her arm, her pulse sinking with the rapid chaos outside. Facing the storm with gratitude for clarity, she stepped out, ready to confront the winds of change. Now, amidst the clamor, the question crystallized. Would she stand by the man who believed in her mission, or succumb to the noise of doubt surrounding them both? This was her moment to seize, and with every ounce of will she could muster, she would pursue clarity in the confusion. What awaited her beyond the door? As she crossed the threshold, a voice echoed behind her, pulling her back with firmness. "Mary, we need to talk about what's happening." It was James, and he looked determined, even more so than she had seen him before. The stakes were rising, and so was her conviction. Would she face them together or alone, as both dreams and fears clashed in the swirl of night? James's gaze was intense, a storm of his own brewing beneath the surface. Mary paused, torn between the pull of his urgency and the tempest outside, where voices clashed like thunder. The cacophony of doubt echoed in her ears, but so did the promise of possibility. She had stepped out seeking clarity, yet here it was, thrust upon her, an opportunity shrouded in uncertainty. "What is this all about?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with an edge of impatience. She felt her grip tightening around the notebook, a tangible symbol of her aspirations. James seemed to sense this shift, and a flicker of acknowledgement shone in his eyes. "People are questioning me, Mary, but more importantly, they're questioning you," he replied, glancing toward the gathered crowd, their buzz like angry bees. "I wanted to give you a chance to..." Not just hear the noise, but to define your own narrative. The weight of his words pressed against her chest. Here was an unexpected revelation. Instead of feeling cornered, she could take control. The thought simmered, and she nodded slowly, her determination coalescing amid the chaos. I want to be part of the story, not just on the sidelines. James's lips curved into a subtle smile. Then let's shape it together. Draw strength from your writing. It's not just an escape, it's your voice. Use it to confront what's happening. She hesitated, awareness dawning that being part of something larger than herself required courage. Could she really intertwine her life's chaos with the unfolding drama around James? The stakes felt higher than ever. It wasn't just about them anymore. It was about defining who she was, both as a daughter and a writer, against the backdrop of real-life obstacles. But what if I write the wrong thing? What if I expose too much or too little? Mary's apprehension colored her thoughts, casting shadows over the flickers of resolve. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's the essence of truth. If you own your story, no one can use it against you, he urged, his voice firm yet encouraging, pulling her further toward the precipice of her potential. The clamor around the diner intensified, but it receded into the background as the world narrowed to the two of them. The enormity of her mother's illness, the weight of her responsibilities, and the pressures of scrutiny collided with the possibility of self-discovery. Writing could no longer be just a silent escape. It had to be a tool for empowerment. The urgency of the moment galvanized her. Let's talk. The determination in her voice drowned the noise. I need to write about this. About us. I need to delve into the truth behind all of it. Her heart pounded as she returned to the small back room, James at her side. The atmosphere shifted, the air electric with anticipation. This was not just about confronting public perception. It was about confronting herself, her fears transforming into catalysts for growth. As she settled back at her familiar, well-worn table, the notebook seemed to hum with potential. She opened to a blank page, its emptiness a challenge. Her pen hovered uncertainly, yet for the first time, it was no longer an intimidating void. It was her canvas, the space where her aspirations could be explored, unfiltered. But just as she began to write, a sharp knock echoed against the door. The sound shattered her moment of reflection, and she looked at James, who raised an eyebrow in question. Was this another distraction, another complication? Should we see who it is? He suggested. Mary's heart raced, the uncertainty twisting in her stomach. This interruption could either bridge her path into the light or throw her back into the shadows. What awaited beyond that door? Would it be support or further scrutiny? With a deep breath, she made her decision. Yes, let's see. As they moved toward the door, a new chapter awaited them, the texture of the unknown promising to shape the direction of both her life and her writing. As Mary approached the door, her pulse quickened. The potential for confrontation loomed heavy in the air, mixing with her eagerness to write about the tumultuous events unfolding around her. She felt a surge of determination, the notion that this knock could either solidify or fracture her emerging narrative. As Mary approached the door, her pulse quickened. The potential for confrontation loomed heavy in the air, mixing with her eagerness to write about the tumultuous events unfolding around her. She felt a surge of determination, the notion that this knock could either solidify or fracture her emerging narrative. James was already reaching for the handle when she hesitated, a familiar unease creeping back. Would opening that door plunge her into chaos, or was it a chance to take control over her own story? Just as she opened her mouth to voice her doubts, James swung the door wide. Standing before them was a tall figure, enveloped in a tailored overcoat, his sharp features lit by the ambient diner light. An air of confidence radiated from him. It was Noah, James's colleague, known for both his wealth and his ruthlessness. His presence sent a ripple of tension through the small room. "James," Noah began, his voice smooth but lacking warmth. "We need to talk, now." His gaze drifted to Mary, assessing her like a piece on a chessboard. She felt exposed. "Can't this wait? We're in the middle of something," James retorted, stepping slightly in front of Mary, as though shielding her from scrutiny. It was a gesture filled with camaraderie, but Mary could sense the tension rising. It punctured the moment she had built around writing. Noah's gaze fell upon Mary again, lingering a moment too long. "I doubt it. Whatever you're working on can wait. This is about managing perception before it gets out of hand." There was a weight behind his words, and Mary's heart sank. It felt as if the narrative she wanted to create was about to be co-opted by someone else's agenda. Standing there, Mary was faced with a defining moment. She could remain silent, ceding ownership of her story to the circumstances and the people around her, or she could push back, asserting her presence as a writer, as someone who sought the truth despite the potential backlash. "Noah, we were just discussing how to navigate the scrutiny," Mary ventured, her voice steadier than she felt. "What if our story could shift people's perceptions instead of being shaped by them?" She had surprised even herself with her defiance. James shot her an impressed look, the corners of his mouth twitching into a smile as he seemed to rally behind her for the first time. "What do you know about perception?" Noah countered, skepticism lacing his tone. "You're just a writer, an observer. The real world isn't as kind to the naive." Mary's breath caught in her throat. His words pierced deeper than she expected. In those moments, she confronted the very fear she had wrestled with since stepping into the diner. Was she merely an onlooker? Would she allow someone like Noah to dictate hers? "No," she replied, a new conviction hardening her resolve. "I'm not just an observer. I can shape what's written about us, what we choose to reveal or conceal. If I'm going to be part of this story, I will be the one wielding the pen." Noah's expression flickered with surprise before settling back into inscrutability, a faint line settling between his brows. James seemed to acknowledge the shift in airtime, stepping aside to let Mary take center stage. The ball was now in her court. Mary realized that confronting Noah, asserting her voice, was an act of vulnerability intertwined with strength. It was as if a larger force was pulling her in, making her a stakeholder in her own life. The pen was slowly becoming her sword. "Let's hear your proposal then," Noah said, leaning back against the doorframe with a blend of curiosity and condescension. Mary's mind raced. She had an opportunity to redefine not just her narrative, but what it meant to be in control of her destiny. This was no longer about James or public perception. It was about her. "Why don't we discuss how we can turn this public scrutiny into a message of unity instead of an excuse for conflict?" she began, her words flowing with newfound clarity. It was a gamble, but as she spoke, she felt her courage fuel her voice, thoughts coalescing into a coherent message. The dynamics were shifting, and with each word, she could sense potential not just for herself, but for everyone involved. The air crackled with possibility. As she finished, she caught James's supportive gaze. This was more than a new chapter. It was a chance to rewrite the one she had almost resigned herself to. But Noah's eyes glinted with something she couldn't quite decipher. Was it intrigue or malice? Whatever it was, it charged the air around them, suggesting that this conversation was just the beginning of something far larger and more perilous than she'd anticipated. What shifts lay ahead in their volatile collaboration? Would Mary discover the strength to fully articulate her vision, or would external pressures prove overwhelming? The door was open, but the outcome remained uncertain, the stakes climbing higher. Mary's heart raced as the implications of her proposals settled in the air. Noah studied her, the flickers of skepticism making her momentarily question the solidity of her idea. Was her vision powerful enough to withstand his scrutiny? Could a mere writer forge a narrative that resonated with a world dictated by power? Interesting approach, Noah said, letting a slight smirk slip past his facade. But let's be clear, this is not about poetry. It's about business, influence, and managing a reputation that carries weight. Unity? This is a battleground, not a commune. Perhaps, Mary countered, her voice tightening. But those who lean only on might miss the opportunity to resonate with people. This could be a pivotal moment, not a mere obstacle. If we show how we tackle scrutiny, we become leaders rather than just players in this game. Noah shifted slightly, folding his arms. And how do you plan to navigate that as an observer? You need to recognize that this dialogue is more than words. It's about power dynamics. You're treading on a razor's edge. The challenge in his voice ignited something deeper within Mary, driving her to dig into the well of conviction she had discovered in herself. This was about more than a narrative. It was about claiming her space in a world that often suffocated voices like hers. Then let's use that upside of scrutiny, she replied, her resolve hardening. Public intrigue has a way of binding us to our audience. If we can turn this situation into dialogue, we transcend the conflict. I'm not just an observer. I will inspire action with my words. Noah arched an eyebrow, the challenge lingering like a sharp scent in the air. In this industry, intentions are only as good as their execution. What can you offer that would truly change the narrative? At that moment, the conversation pivoted. It was no longer a mere exchange of ideas, but a contest of wills. Mary reached deep within, sifting through her experiences, the moments that had forged her resilience. This was her arena. What if I help bring forward those personal stories that are so often masked by the politics? Stories have the power to humanize, Mary declared, the weight of her gaze holding steady with newfound tenacity. What we're facing isn't just a public affair, it's an opportunity to connect with people who share similar struggles, who crave authenticity. A flicker of something, was it interest or calculation, danced across Noah's face. So, you want to play the role of gatekeeper to these narratives. You think courage alone will sway the audience? I think courage is the first step. Mary felt her heart align with her words, a synergy forming between intent and action. Once we connect, the narrative can be reshaped to invite empathy rather than fear. We just need to take the first bold steps to share those stories. She could see it now, a collaborative vision where they could harness their collective power to redefine their circumstances. This was not about her or him. It was about soliciting a dialogue that could penetrate deeper into the public consciousness. What you're suggesting requires sacrifice, Noah warned, his eyes narrowing as he leaned forward. It could put us at an immense risk if we amplify the wrong stories. You have to understand the stakes. I'm willing to risk, Mary asserted, her conviction fortified by the clarity of her own motives. Nothing worth having comes without some risk. If we're going to move forward, it must be together, willing to bear the burden of authenticity. Noah paused, the tension thick between them. He weighed her words against a lifetime of cynical pragmatism. For a heartbeat, she believed he saw the potential, a spark that could ignite change rather than perpetuate discord. As he considered her, Mary felt the ground beneath her shift. This wasn't just a conversation. It was a pivot point, a metamorphosis, where she could assert her narrative. Could she redirect the arc from passive observer to bold architect of her story? Fine, Noah finally said, the edges of his voice softening but still hinting at underlying caution. Let's see if a writer can truly carry weight in a world governed by power. I want to hear more of your ideas before we make any movements. In that moment, the gravity of their impending collaboration settled over her like a warm cloak. She had survived this first round, but the real battle lay ahead. Mary could sense that this was merely the first act. The air was charged with unresolved tension, ideas bouncing against the walls of their exchange, both powerful and uncertain. As she glanced at James, a renewed sense of purpose surged within her. The stakes were now intricately tied to her choices. Mary was faced not just with the challenge of rewriting a story, but rewriting her entire fate in the process. The ground shifted again, and she realized one stark truth. She would need to prepare beyond the dialogue. This partnership could mean forging an alliance with someone as unpredictable as Noah. What hidden motives lay in store for her? Would this journey empower her to soar or pull her into depths she couldn't escape? Mary felt the weight of her decisions settle upon her, foreseeing the tumultuous navigation ahead as she delved deeper into both story and self. The following morning, Mary stood before her reflection, the mirror revealing more than just her physical presence. Pale light filtered through the kitchen window, illuminating the determined glint in her eyes. The conversation with Noah played over in her mind, a mental reel of challenge and opportunity she could either embrace or evade. She took a deep breath, the air invigorating her resolve. Today was not just about participating, but about crafting the framework for what could emerge from their collaboration. She moved through her morning routine like a soldier preparing for battle, each step cementing her focus. This wasn't about whims. It was about the sharp, unyielding clarity of purpose she had only recently uncovered within herself. How could she harness this newfound strength? Writing wasn't merely her profession, but her weapon of choice. She envisioned the narratives she could weave, stories not just of struggle, but also of resilience and triumph. She would elevate those whose voices had been muted by the harshness of misrepresentation. By noon, she was seated at her desk, surrounded by notes and research that urged her forward. The task felt monumental, creating a foundation upon which Noah would see value. It dawned on her that she had to unveil the very aspects of her identity that could align with the chaos of the world around her. Each story she planned to unearth needed to reveal the humanity obscured by political maneuvering. Mary set to work crafting a proposal, a detailed outline highlighting her vision for their collaboration. She referenced personal accounts that echoed broader societal issues, blending anecdotal evidence with strategic insights. The intention was clear: to transform scrutiny into relevance and alienation into connection. As the hours wore on, ideas flowed like water, and she lost herself in the act of creation. For the first time, the act of writing felt transformative rather than merely production-driven. She was the architect of narratives, and her pen had the power to build bridges. With her proposal nearing completion, a nagging thought unfurled in the back of her mind. Would Noah embrace her vision? Would he hold on to his skepticism, remaining tethered to an old playbook of business as usual? The thought ignited a fire in her belly. The day wore on into dusk when her phone rang. It was Noah, a request for her to meet later that evening, buzzing with both uncertainty and urgency. Familiar sensations rumbled within her, a mixture of excitement and dread. In the running over of her mind, a slew of questions compounded. How would he react to her proposal? What specifics would he challenge? More importantly, would he recognize the weight of the stories she intended to highlight? She understood that nothing could prepare her for the gravity of their interaction, yet anticipation edged out anxiety. At the cafe where they agreed to meet, Mary's heart thumped against her ribcage in anticipation. She scuttled through her notes, flipping through each page to solidify her resolve. The stakes felt high, and suddenly it occurred to her that this meeting could determine her trajectory. What if this was the pivotal moment where Mary claimed her narrative, or the moment Noah's disinterest unraveled her purpose? For all her preparation, the outcome hinged on a single encounter. The cafe buzzed around her, yet she remained isolated in her thoughts, awash in both hope and trepidation. As the bell above the door jingled, signaling Noah's arrival, Mary straightened in her chair, simultaneously studying herself and bracing for impact. The moment he strode toward her, an air of command surrounding him, she was struck by the realization of a profound truth. This was not just about the stories. They were carving her path forward. The weight of potential reverberated in the space between them as he took a seat across the table. A challenge loomed, and she could practically feel the air crackle with tension. Would he lean in, ready to disrupt the norm, or would he retreat into the comfort of tradition? She could no longer waver. This was the moment Mary would reveal not only her ideas, but also her relentless spirit. A shift was in the air, one that demanded she step into her truth. No backing down now. "Let's talk," she said, her voice firm yet laced with anticipation. As Noah regarded her with heat in his gaze, she could sense the opening before her, the potential for a confrontation that could shift her entire reality. But would Noah be ready to dive into the depths she was prepared to explore? A world of uncertainty and uncharted waters awaited them both, and Mary braced herself for the tide of their developing partnership. Mary's breath seemed to catch momentarily in her throat as Noah settled into his chair. The cafe's ambient noise faded to a hush, creating an intimate cocoon around them. She studied him with a mixture of intrigue and anxiety, the weight of her proposal heavier than the steaming mug in front of her. "Mary," he began, his voice steady yet probing, "I've been thinking about your ideas." The space between them felt electric, an unspoken acknowledgement of the risk they were both facing. "You mentioned storytelling," he continued, leaning forward, "but I wonder, how do you stand out in a landscape that's saturated with narratives?" The question hung in the air, gnawing at the edges of her confidence. He sought clarity, and she felt as if she were teetering on the precipice of revelation or rejection. Her instinct was to recite the statistics and highlight the intricacies of her research, but that would be an evasion. Instead, she took a measured breath, her mind racing through the core of her vision. Standing out isn't only about the stories, it's about the authenticity behind them, she replied, her words emerging with conviction. It's the rawness of experience that connects us. But do you think the audience truly cares about the rawness? His question was a challenge, an invitation to dig deeper into her convictions. The determination within her ignited. She had to confront that doubt head-on. "Absolutely, they care," Mary responded with fierce intensity. "People want to be seen, to feel a sense of belonging in someone else's experience. When you share a person's reality, a voice is restored, and that's the bridge we can build together." She leaned in, crossing the invisible divide of their professional roles as she embraced this moment of vulnerability. Noah sat back, his eyes narrowing slightly, as though weighing her words, fishing for inconsistencies in her argument. There was heat in his scrutiny, and Mary felt exposed, each word she spoke maneuvering through a labyrinth of perceptions. What if it falls flat? What if we don't inspire the change we hope to achieve? The skepticism lingered, unearthed by his glare, as if he were peeling back layers of her resolve. "Then we learn and adapt," she countered, a spark igniting in her chest. "But doing nothing is the only guarantee of failure, and I refuse to be complacent while the stories linger unheard." Her own voice soared with conviction, resonating in the space between them like a clarion call. He tilted his head, a flicker of something akin to admiration crossing his features. "You do believe in this, don't you?" "Yes," she assured him, "I'm willing to fight for the stories that need to be told." Mary could feel the heat of her passion radiating through the air, a palpable force that made the coffee shop feel both small and vast at the same time. Noah's expression shifted, his skepticism revealing a hint of intrigue. He leaned forward again, the atmosphere around them thickening with possibility. "What's our next step?" he asked, an earnestness woven into his tone. In that moment, Mary realized she had not only defended her vision, but had planted seeds of doubt in his reserved facade. Let's start testing concepts, she suggested, adrenaline fueling her words. We can create small pilot projects, narratives to see which resonate before we go big. It was a calculated proposal, one that merged her artistic bravado with practical application, showing him she could operate within his structured world while remaining true to her foundation. Noah nodded slowly, visibly contemplating the merits of her approach. As the conversation shifted gears, a thrilling sense of agency coursed through Mary. They created a paper trail for their ideas, documenting possibilities and dissecting the elements that could be tweaked and refined. Each passing moment painted a clearer picture of their potential collaboration, a blend of her creativity and his analytical prowess. Just as an easy rapport began to settle between them, Noah's phone buzzed on the table, cutting through the momentum like a sudden gust of wind. He glanced at it, and the shift in his demeanor was immediate, the spark that lingered in his eyes dulling as he processed whatever was unfolding on the screen. "Excuse me for a moment," he said, steeling himself for an interruption. Mary watched as he stepped away, her mind racing into overdrive, both electrified by the conversation they just had and concerned by the uncertainty looming just around the corner. She understood that this could either signal the start of a partnership that would lift her work to new heights or a jarring return to the restless void that had characterized her creative frustrations. As she gazed out the window, watching a world that seemed oblivious to her impending pivot, a question lingered in her mind. How far was she willing to go to make her voice resound? Just then, Noah returned, a storm of urgency settling back in place around him, and she knew their journey was far from over. "What you just said, it's opened my eyes to opportunities," Noah stated, a slight catch in his throat before he added, "but challenges are unfolding faster than I anticipated. We need to talk priorities, and there's more at stake than we realize." Mary's heart raced. Who or what was threatening to derail their trajectory? As the reality of the challenges washed over her, she understood that stepping into her truth was merely the beginning. Mary felt the shift in the air as Noah returned, the urgency in his tone wrapping around her like a constrictor. His demeanor had changed, and the tension in the cafe seemed to pulse, creating a rhythm of uncertainty. She placed her hands flat on the table, grounding herself, hoping to steady the rising tide of anxiety in her chest. "Tell me more about these challenges," she urged, her voice steady despite the apprehensive flutter in her stomach. The words that had buoyed her moments ago felt dangerously fragile now, as if any misstep could shatter the newfound momentum they had built together. Noah hesitated, as if weighing the implications of his next words. "I just received an update about funding issues. The backers are hesitant," he admitted, running a hand through his hair, the gesture betraying his own agitation. "This means we need to reevaluate our strategy quickly. We can't afford to waste time." For a moment, the coffee shop, once a backdrop for artistic dreams, became a stark reminder of the corporate realities that suffocated them. Mary's breath quickened as she instinctively probed deeper into her thoughts. So much was at stake, but this was not new territory. If anything, it was her strength to pivot in crisis that had led her here. "Let's clarify what we can deliver within these constraints," she suggested, her mind racing with possibilities. "Perhaps we can focus our pilot projects to showcase the most relatable stories first. That will give the backers tangible evidence of impact and community connection." Noah's brow furrowed, impressively analytical, and it dawned on Mary how quickly he could switch into problem-solving mode. This was the Noah she had hoped existed beneath the surface, a partner who could navigate through barriers with her. "Not a bad idea," he admitted, a flicker of renewed optimism surfacing. "But we'll need to prioritize our narratives. We should choose stories that evoke strong emotional responses." The crackling tension in the air transformed into an alliance of sorts as they dove into a frenzied brainstorming session. Mary began to list potential narratives, voices of adversity, journeys of resilience, stories that could tug at heartstrings and compel action. Each idea she voiced felt like an infusion of adrenaline, a reminder of the purpose they were pursuing, to connect, to matter. As they crafted their plans, an idea flickered in her mind, a notion that held power just beneath the surface. What was she hoping to inspire through this? It wasn't merely the stories, it was a revolution of heart, to bring authenticity to the mainstream, to elevate unheard voices. She wanted them to not just hear the narratives, but to feel them. After a productive hour, Noah leaned back, a grin forming at the corners of his mouth. "You're really onto something, Mary. I didn't expect this level of insight or passion." Surprise coursed through her. The validation felt foreign yet invigorating. "I have to be honest, I felt lost for a while," she confessed, vulnerability piercing through her professional facade. "But what you offered today reignited my hope. I've been wanting to create something that resonates, not just entertains." Noah's expression softened, a new layer of understanding knitting them closer. "Then let's ensure we create something worthwhile. If we can get it right, it could lead to a larger platform. We'll need to present these ideas to the backers soon." Her heart hummed at the prospect. They were on the cusp of transforming ideas into action. Yet, despite the thrill, uncertainty lingered. But what if I'm not enough? What if my stories don't resonate as I hope? "No, don't doubt yourself now. You have the drive and authenticity, qualities that will bring this to life," he replied, a steely resolve seeping through his voice. "I see potential in you that you might not even recognize yet." His words hung there, heavy with weight, igniting a fire inside of her. She was on the crux of self-discovery, standing at the rim of a precipice marked by her aspirations and the realities of a pragmatic world. Yet the shadows of self-doubt pressed closely as she struggled to silence the inner critic urging caution. Could she truly claim the stage they were building together? Would she allow herself to be the instrument that facilitated these life-altering stories? "Noah, may I ask, what's at stake for you?" she ventured, intrigued and suddenly aware that their partnership hinged on both their risks. He looked contemplative, the vulnerability in his eyes revealing a glimpse of personal stakes hidden beneath his business acumen. "Failure isn't an option for me. I'm invested in making a mark, but on a personal level, I've spent too long being tethered to a desk, away from the impactful work I envisioned for myself." Their gazes collided, an unspoken acknowledgement passing between them. Both were teetering on the edge of breaking free, ready to transcend the fears of inadequacy and external judgment. As the anxiety of their aspirations swirled, Mary realized the true gravity of taking this leap. They were intertwined in a journey that could redefine their lives. Mary's heart raced as she finally stood at the edge of that precipice, the world beyond beckoning with relentless promise and uncertainty. Would they forge ahead into this uncharted territory or face the haunting specter of what could have been? The stakes had never felt higher, but neither had her resolve. She drew a breath, the intensity in her voice solidifying her direction. Let's not just tell stories, let's make them unforgettable. As they began planning their next steps, a single thought gripped Mary with both excitement and dread. What would happen when the world cast its gaze on the narratives they were about to unveil? The days that followed their meeting were a whirlwind for Mary. Each morning, as the sun pierced through her window, she woke with a renewed sense of purpose. Yet, within the heart of that purpose lay an ever-present uncertainty that gnawed at her resolve. The tension of their shared ambition had lit a fire, but the flicker of doubt was a persistent companion. Mary filled notebooks with ideas, each page an experiment in vulnerability and creativity. She explored the contours of her narratives, researching topics, speaking to potential storytellers, and sifting through emotions that ranged from joy to heartache. They were more than mere stories. They were echoes of lives, each worthy of being shared. And yet, beneath her fervor, a fear festered. What if her voice fell flat? What if her passion failed to translate into something meaningful? Noah's unwavering encouragement propelled her forward, but a creeping suspicion lingered, the fear that beneath her budding confidence was an imposter waiting for a moment to expose her inexperience. She often caught herself hesitating, questioning if she had the right to steer this project into existence. But with each anxious thought that twisted her stomach, she reminded herself of every powerful narrative she had absorbed over the years. She had witnessed the strength of storytelling to transform. Perhaps her own story of transformation was just beginning. As they prepared for their presentation to the backers, Mary grappled with the tremendous weight of expectation. They had decided to highlight 3 powerful narratives that, when woven together, painted a broader picture of resilience. Each story had its own unique journey, yet they harmonized to symbolize collective struggle and triumph. Sitting across from Noah the night before their meeting, Mary pulled at her sleeve, a nervous habit she had retained since childhood. The cafe was quieter now, an intimate space filled only with half-finished mugs and hushed whispers. "Do you really think we can pull this off?" she asked, no longer able to mask the doubt that threatened to spill over. Noah looked up from his notes, his brow slightly furrowed in thought. "We've laid the groundwork. Now it's time to believe in what we've created. This isn't just about profit, it's about impact, and you've already demonstrated that." His words washed over her, soothing yet unsettling. But what if we don't connect? What if we can't invoke the emotions we want? Noah leaned forward, his gaze steady. Every story we tell will resonate differently. What matters is that they come from a place of authenticity. Authenticity resonates more than any polished narrative ever could. Mary nodded, absorbing the gravity of his encouragement, yet her inner voice churned with resistance. She closed her eyes for a moment, drawing a deep breath. What if she could step into her own authenticity, shedding the fear that wrapped around her like a shroud? Stirring to action, she proposed an idea. "Let's integrate an interactive element to our presentation. We could allow the backers a live experience of what the audience may feel, create empathy rather than just present data." Noah's eyes lit up with interest. "That's brilliant. Making it immersive will bridge the gap between us and them, allow them to step into the stories." For the first time, Mary felt a trickle of confidence. If she could facilitate a deeper connection beyond mere numbers, it could shift perspectives. It was a plan rooted in her belief that stories weren't just destinations, they were journeys that pulled us into empathy's embrace. As the meeting day approached, urgency fueled them both. Late nights blurred into early mornings, filled with rehearsals, edits, and emotional punches delivered in every word exchange. Yet, as she stood before the mirror that morning, dressed in a blend of professional attire and her own flavor, she caught a glimpse of vulnerability and strength juxtaposed. Could she truly step into this role? If failure loomed in their path, would she abandon the mission or find a way through it? Mary's heart thundered as she recalled the stories that had shaped her. She remembered the moments when she felt unheard and unseen. There lay her power, to give a voice to the voiceless. Her resolve crystallized. She wasn't merely a participant, she was an architect of possibility. With this heightened awareness, Mary made a pact with herself. She would rise to the challenge, ready to take on the weight of their dreams. Stepping out into the world, she felt the electric pulse of anxiety beneath her skin. The back office awaited, a room full of financiers whose responses could either make or break their aspirations. This was her moment to confront doubt head-on, to choose courage amid uncertainty. As she intertwined her arm with Noah's, they stepped into the space that held immense potential, both palpable and daunting. A murmur of excitement rippled through her, leading her to question one undeniable truth. Was it only the audience's perception that mattered, or did her own belief in her story hold equal weight? Determination surged within her as they approached the doors. Their dreams didn't merely rest on a presentation, They were a call to revolutionize how narratives were presented and perceived. But as they crossed the threshold into the room, a thought lingered. What if this moment changed everything? Would it shatter the mirror of her self-doubt? Or would she step into a new narrative entirely? The moment of truth loomed just beyond the door. Mary stood in the presentation room, her heart racing, a tidal wave of anticipation and fear gripping her. Behind the polished table, financiers shifted uneasily, their gaze penetrating. This was the moment she had envisioned, a pivotal encounter that could crown her as both the architect of stories and a beacon of resilience. The room buzzed with an unspoken tension. Noah leaned in, his presence a sturdy anchor. "Remember why we're here," he whispered. "You've got this." She shot him a quick smile, a fleeting reminder of the trust they had built together. Taking a deep breath, Mari approached the front, her pulse steadying as she reached for the remote. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice resonating confidently through the room. "Today, we're not just presenting stories, we're sharing lives, honest narratives that reflect the complexities of resilience." Her heart surged as choice words flowed with effortless sincerity. She was no longer just a waitress with hidden aspirations, but a vessel of truth, ready to transcend limitations. As she clicked to the first slide, visuals of her selected stories emerged, faces filled with hope, courage layered in each narrative. These stories represent lives deeply impacted by shortcomings, but they also illuminate the human spirit, she continued, locking eyes with the investors. By integrating these experiences into our project, we're creating a dialogue that challenges perspectives. We want to inspire, not just inform. She prepared herself for objections, but what followed was exhilarating. The investors leaned in, captivated, questions morphing into genuine curiosity. "How can we elevate these stories further?" one of them inquired. Mary's confidence soared. "By crafting immersive experiences that let our audience step into the narratives. We invite them to feel what our storytellers have endured. Connectedness through empathy leads to action." The room buzzed with energy, colleagues engaged and nodding in agreement, the collective pulse syncing with her vision. As she transitioned into discussing the interactive elements they proposed, a new vibrancy infused her voice. For Mary, this was more than just an execution plan. It was a representation of her own metamorphosis. Imagine hosting events where smaller groups can hear these stories live, share their experiences, and interact with the storytellers. It creates space for authentic connection and possibility, she pitched, her heart pounding with urgency. The atmosphere shifted palpably. Somewhere within, doubt shrunk as a newfound belief crystallized into existence. The diverse audience responded now with fervor. Ideas bounced around the table, igniting momentum. It was as if they were all collaborating, standing shoulder to shoulder in the quest for transformation. Yet, amid the excitement, another question arose, tinged with skepticism. Is there market viability for such a project? Audiences tend to lean towards action rather than introspection, one investor cautioned. Mary steadied herself, feeling a familiar ghost of self-doubt raising its head. But as she sensed Noah's encouraging glance, a spark flared within her. That same skepticism was levied against stories of vulnerability in the past, she recalled. Yet they've proven transformative, invoking change rather than disinterest. Audiences crave authenticity, a reminder of our shared humanity. Her voice was unwavering, ignited by her passion for empowerment. This was her arena, her narrative, and the culmination of everything she had fought for. "Let's not forget the power of a shared narrative," she continued, her conviction cleaving deep into the atmosphere. "This project is rooted in personal stories, real experiences. These resonate because they're not just stories to hear. They are experiences that inspire reflections and provoke discussions." And as she spoke, realization dawned. This was her life transformed, no longer chained by fear, but liberated by purpose. Noah's supportive presence surged beside her. As the meeting progressed, investors leaning into conversation, engaged and actively contributing. The room shifted into a hive of collaboration, a captivating realization that their mission held tangible significance. And as Mary logged every query and feedback, her confidence solidified. Each response was recognition of her growth, each nod from colleagues a repurposing of who she had been. No longer just an observer, she had stepped into her role as a creator, ready to master the journey ahead. The conclusion became inevitable. "This is just the beginning," she articulated, closing with a flourish. "Together, we will redefine how stories are told, engage hearts, and forge a path to empowerment unlike any other. Thank you." Relief mixed with euphoria washed over her as the room erupted into applause. Each clap reverberated through her, echoing recognition, fulfillment, a culmination of growth and transformation. Noah turned to her, pride gleaming in his expression. The bond they shared solidified in that instant. After the meeting ended, as the buzz of conversation filled the air, an investor approached. "Mary, your passion is palpable. We'd like to move forward. Let's discuss funding logistics." That statement hit her like a surge of electricity. She had conquered the unknown, proving herself worthy of this journey. The threshold of uncertainty had transformed into one of validated potential. As Mary stepped out, the weight of doubt lifted, and clarity flooded her senses. She was no longer just a waitress with hidden dreams. She was a formidable storyteller whose words could inspire change, shaped by her experiences, reaching far beyond the diner she once called home. With the future dawning bright before her, Mary felt solid confidence flow through her, preparing to embrace all that lay ahead. She had taken control of her narrative, and this was only the beginning. Now, it is your moment to rise to glory. Don't wait another second to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that can transform your life. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment your reactions and theories about this journey. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this powerful conclusion. Remember, only true fans of overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.